everybody, Jolt here from the TokenMinorities, and we are here with the Week 5 battle of the NPL, this week against the Colorado Avaluggs, coached by my friend Fog. Last week we did pick up a pretty big win against Richard Arisen's Oakland Rose Raiders, so this week we are putting our undefeated record on the line again against a very formidable opponent. His team is pretty difficult for mine to match up against, actually, as you can see here. He is packing a lot of wall breakers, or at least potential wall breakers, in Hoopa Unbound, Landorus, T, Mew, and really Entei for that matter, Mega Altaria, all of which are very good at breaking walls. With that in mind, I'm going to have to prepare very carefully for his team, and that I can't just try to outlast him with fat things. I'll have to mix it up with some pretty powerful offense as well to make sure I'm able to maintain momentum, because if I don't have momentum in this game, I'm going to be in for a long ride. So as for the biggest threats to my team, Hoopa Unbound is by far the biggest threat here, as it has such incredible coverage options that it's going to be able to 2-hit KO, I believe, my entire team with any one move that it can learn. So that's a problem, to say the least, and with that in mind, I'm going to have to make sure I really outspeed it with most of my things, and the things that don't outspeed it need to be able to take at least one hit from it so that I don't let it become too big of an issue. And then another potentially huge threat is a Double Dance Landorus Therian, as after a Swords Dance and a Rock Polish, that thing has the potential to blow back my entire team, so that's kind of an issue. I do have Gliscor, potentially Unaware Clefable to handle that, but everything else would just get blown back by it, so I need to keep a close eye on that in my preparation to make sure that that's not going to get out of hand. And then of course the Mew is another threat just because it is so versatile. It can do literally anything. Luckily on his team it's kind of restricted to a defog role, in that it'll probably be a defensive defogger, as one, Mew defensively synergizes with Chansey very well, so it's likely that he will try to use it in a defensive core as such, but two, he hasn't run an offensive Mew all season, so I'm not really expecting an offensive Mew this week. However, I do still have to respect it, because a Nasty Plotter Swords Dance Mew is also very effective against my team. So that's the initial analysis here of what he could bring. Mega Altaria could be potentially a threat, but I do have Clefable, Jirachi, and Talonflame, all of which are pretty common checks and counters for that matter to any form of Altaria, so I'm not that concerned about it, but of course it could become a problem if I let my things get weakened and such. So that's what I have to say about that. As far as my threats to his team, Clefable's a huge threat, huge threat, because I can run something like Cosmic Power on it this week, and after Cosmic Power, he doesn't have much on his team that can 2-hit KO me, so that's pretty cool to keep in mind. His best answers to that probably would be something along the lines of Roaring Mew. Entei could run Roar, could also run Banded Ironhead, Banded Sacred Fire, of course. That would do a lot of damage to me. And then Gunk Shot Hoopa Unbound would be pretty good. Landorus T with an Earthplate can 2-hit KO, a defensive Clefable with Earthquake. However, if I have a Cosmic Power up, it cannot, so that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, Clefable's looking like a huge threat this week. In addition to Gliscor, as Gliscor is able to wall a very large chunk of his team, in that if he decides to run a standard Hoopa Unbound, like the standard one you would see on the ladder, then Gliscor actually walls that very well. It takes less than 50%, or maybe slightly more, probably more, from a banded Hyperspace Fury from Hoopa Unbound, and that's obviously the strongest attack Hoopa Unbound has in its arsenal, so if I could wall that with Gliscor, then I'm in pretty good shape there. But it does have the potential to run something like Hidden Power Ice, or just be a fully special set with Psychic, and that would be a big issue for a physically defensive Gliscor. So Hoopa Unbound's a big threat, but Gliscor should be able to wall it and a majority of Fog's team pretty well. And it's also looking like a Stallbreaker Talonflame is very good against him, because he only has, I believe, two strong physical options that have access to rock moves against me. I guess 3 technically with Mew. So Landorus T, Mew, and Entei, all of which have access to high physical attack stat and Stone Edge or Rock Slide. So those 3 are going to be the biggest threats to Talonflame, or this variant of Talonflame this week, but I do think that a Stallbreaker Talonflame is going to be very effective here, especially considering his best counter to that, quote-unquote, would be the Rotom Wash, and especially defensive Talonflame eats that alive, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, so that's about all I have to say about the team matchup. I do think that I do not have the edge in the matchup this week, just because he does have so many powerful wall breakers and such versatile threats, but I do think that my team is capable of being prepared for it, and I'm going to do the best I can in the team building process. So let's go ahead and hop over to that real quick. Alright, so in building this team, I started off with Clefable. As I mentioned before, it is probably the best option I have against his team as far as sweeping potential is concerned. And with that in mind, I am going to run a Calm Mind Cosmic Power set, as after a Cosmic Power, he literally has nothing that can KO me. I guess he could try a Banded Gunk Shot Mew, maybe a Banded Gunk Shot Hoopa Unbound, that'll do it. Life Orb Hoopa Unbound can also 2-hit KO me with Gunk Shot, but other than that, he has nothing that can 2-hit KO me after a Cosmic Power. So Clefable is very, very strong in this matchup for that reason, and then coupling that with Calm Mind and Moonblast is going to give me incredible sweeping potential against this team, and I just see this being incredibly effective this week. He really just doesn't have very many options for it. He needs to run something with Roar, Haze, or maybe even Psych Up to deter me from making this set do so well this week, but I guess we'll see what happens. But this is definitely win condition number 1 this week, and I will do my best to make it shine. So next up is the Gliscor, in that I kind of need this Gliscor set as a primary switch in to Hoopa Unbound, as I don't have anything that really wants to switch in, but Gliscor wants to switch in more than anything else does, so I'm hoping that it's going to run a physical, or at least physically oriented Hoopa Unbound this week, and if he does, then I can easily switch this in on Life Orb or Banded Hyperspace Fury, and act accordingly from there. And yeah, this also is going to be my primary answer to Chansey. I really don't expect him to bring Chansey this week because I have been known to run a dual fighting Korra, Breloom, and Lucario, but if he does decide to bring it, then this will be my primary switch into it, because every time he brings in Chansey, I can switch this thing straight in, and really I don't care if he runs Ice Beam because Chansey can't hit anything. So I should be able to just get a free Swords Dance or even a knockoff on the incoming Rotom, something like that, and wearing down Rotom, of course, is very nice considering the rest of my team really wants to have Rotom out of the way in order to shine. So I think this is going to be very effective this week as well. This also gives me, it also comes in pretty easily on Dugtrio, as I do kind of expect him to bring Dugtrio this week to combat my potential Jirachi and Tentacruel, and I'm actually going to be running a Shed Shell on my Jirachi this week, which I'll show here in a little bit, and that'll just let me go straight into Gliscor and of course get a free Swords Dance off against the Dugtrio as well. So that will be hopefully pretty good this week as well, and we'll kind of see how that goes. Next up is the Talonflame, and this is a stall-breaking, specially defensive Talonflame, really the ideal set for this matchup, in that it's going to completely shut down Chansey. Chansey can't touch this. It's going to, once I get a burn off on the Rotom Wash, assuming it's a defensive or specially defensive variant, this just beats it, in that I can outstall all the Hydro Pumps, and he's bound to miss 1 or 2 of them anyway, and I can Roost Stall until he is really low on HP due to the burn, and then Rotom is essentially useless, and like I said before, without Rotom my team really shines, so, or against him. So yeah, Talonflame is really good for that, but more importantly, it's going to be my primary counter to Mega Altaria, as with Taunt and Wisp and Brave Bird for that matter, Mega Altaria can't do anything to me, in that once I get a Wisp buff on it, the best they can do is like Draco Meteor, and I really don't expect him to bring Draco Meteor for 1 because I do have Clefable, but 2, this just walls it anyway. After a Draco Meteor, I can easily roost off any damage, and there's nothing Mega Altaria can do to 2-hit KO this Talonflame. It would need like +2 return to 2-hit KO me, I believe. And even so, I get off a Wisp on one of those turns and do a lot of damage from there. So I'm not really concerned about Mega Altaria as long as I have this Talonflame around. And yeah, so I think this is going to be pretty effective this week. There is something that I do need to keep an eye on, and that's the Landorus T, as I'm only running enough speed on this to creep a Modest or Adamant Mew. If he decides to run offensive Mew this week, I'm not running enough to creep a Jolly Landorus T. So if he does run that, then I'm going to have to just go straight into Gliscor against that, because like I said, Double Dance Landorus T is just an enormous threat to my team. I can't really mess around with it, and obviously I don't want to risk my Talonflame on the potential that he's like just going to go for Stone Edge, or potentially that's going to go for like a Swords Dance or something against my Talonflame. So that's something to keep in mind. But I am, like I said, creeping a base 100 neutral speed nature, and hopefully that's all I really need here. Mew is kind of a threat, really, especially offensive Mew, but I guess that's to be expected. I'm just banking on the fact that he's going to run a set similar to what he's run in the past, just because he does have to lean on Mew to defog. He has no other defoggers on his team, and hopefully that carries over to this week. So that's the idea with this. I really think that these 3 Mons, Clefable, Gliscor, and Talonflame, are going to be the most essential Mons in this matchup, just because they do really beat the majority of his team just on their own, which is pretty nice. He really doesn't have anything to beat those very well. So those will likely stick around if I'm going to win this game, or they're going to have to stick around for that matter if I'm going to win this game this week. Now, next up, I'm going to turn to my offense a little bit and go to this Specs Lucario. Now, I'm running Choice Specs this week because he has a Chansey. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird, but I'm doing that because I think that I'm going to deter him from bringing Chansey this week. And with that said, when I have Lucario, he's going to most definitely assume that I am a physical Lucario, because I need a physical Lucario to beat a Chansey. So with that in mind, I am running Specs, because I think that he's going to switch into a physical wall against my Lucario, maybe Landorus T if he runs defensive. It's also possible that he'll go into something like Mew. Regardless, it's not going to appreciate a Specs Aura Sphere or a Specs Flash Cannon or a Dark Pulse for that matter. So that's the idea with this set. I think it's going to be really effective as well. And just like with the Talonflame, I am speed creeping, neutral speed, base 100s, so that'll be Adamant, Modest Mew. That'll also include, well, Landorus T isn't base 100, but it does outspeed Adamant Landorus T, which is pretty nice. It outspeeds Entei, and yes, I believe that's it. Yes. So that's pretty cool. And then I'm also running Extreme Speed on this just as a secondary, tertiary check to the potential Double Dance Landorus T, as I know I can weaken Landorus T with my Gliscor at the very least, in addition to I can take, well, I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I can take a +2 Stone Edge with my Mega Latios set, and that'll also give me an opportunity to weaken the Landorus T with that. So this is just, and also Brave Bird from Talonflame, so I just needed to keep as many checks as possible to Landorus T to make sure it doesn't really get out of hand. But yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good this week. And then next up is the Jirachi. Like I said before, I'm running a Shed Shell on this, such that I cannot be trapped by Dugtrio, and it gives me an opportunity to set up with my Gliscor, or I guess even my Mega Latios can come in on Dugtrio if he's locked into Earthquake or something. So that's something to keep in mind. However, this set is really effective as a another check to Mega Altaria, just to make sure that I don't have too many issues with it. If he gets like Stealth Rock up early in the game and Talonflame can't come in and wall a +1 return, then I'll probably have to turn to something like Jirachi or Clefable to handle the Altaria from there. So it's just good to have this around, and it's also nice because this set does allow me to flinch down Chansey if it comes too big of a problem. It also allows me to take on Kyurem very well, in that I'm running enough special defense investment, of course max HP as well, to take any hit from Kyurem really with ease. I believe I'm only 3 at KO by Earth Power, even Specs Earth Power. So I'm not sure about Specs, but it won't do that much. I'm not terribly concerned about Kyurem this week at all, especially because I also have Talonflame that can switch in on it really easily. So regardless, I do think this is pretty good. It also helped me maintain momentum and get up Stealth Rock in this game if I need them. So yeah, this is pretty good this week. It's also a primary switch into Excelgor, as if he does have Final Gambit ambitions, then this will be my fodder for that. In that it's been my fodder for Final Gambits 2 times already this season. This might be the 3rd time. I guess we'll see. But this is my best switch into Excelgor anyway. And if he wants to go down with a Final Gambit to take out my Jirachi, then more power to him. Go ahead. I really don't care that much. But that's the first 5 mods. And then finally Mega Latios, in that he has the potential to run Spike Stack, and of course in combination with Stealth Rock this week. So I want to make sure that I have Defog, and my options there were either Tentacruel or Mega Latios or Defog Gliscor, which just wasn't happening. So I decided to go with Latios this week for that role, and I wanted to make sure that I was not going to be able to be hard-walled by Mega Altaria, so I am running Ice Beam and Draco Meteor this week, in that if I lead with Mega Latios, which I do plan to do, in that before he Mega Evolves with his Mega Altaria, nothing wants to take a Draco Meteor from this. So I guess Klefki can, that's fine if he brings Klefki, I really don't care, I have everything else that beats Klefki on my team. So regardless, I'm going to lead with this, probably just drop a Draco on turn 1. I do need to lead with it just to make sure his Mew doesn't get out of hand, because if he's an SD or Nasty Plot Mew, or even an Expert Belt Mew, I can't let him have a free turn to just hit something hard. So I need to keep the pressure on immediately, and the best way to do that is to start with the fastest thing on my team. That is the Mega Latios. So that's the plan with this, and it has enough bulk, like I said before, to survive a +2 Adamant Stone Edge from a non-Life Orb Landorus Therian, which I think is pretty essential in this matchup. Hopefully I don't have to take Stealth Rock damage before dealing with that, but I do need as many checks as possible to handle that thing. So that's the team. I really don't have much else to say. It's a tough matchup, like I said before, but I do think I prepared very well for it. And yeah, I guess we'll just see what happens. So let's go ahead and hop on over to the battle. So at Team Preview, I'm just a little bit confused with what he brought, in that he didn't bring Landorus T and he didn't bring Hoopa Unbound. So I don't really... Just initially, I don't really understand his thought process behind his build. I don't really know what his plan is. That's going to make this a little bit tough here at the beginning, because I don't really know what he's going for. But at face value, it does appear that I have all of his potential threats really well countered and checked. in that Mega Altaria can't really get going when I have a Stallbreaker Talonflame, and when I have something like Jirachi and Clefable all around to really deter it from doing anything too crazy. And Chansey is kind of dead weight against my team in my opinion, so that's not going to do much of anything. Rotom, if it's defensive, is not going to do much when I have a Clefable and a Mega Latios to take hits from it. Klefki doesn't do anything anyway, it's just there for dual screens and probably spikes. Entei probably is banded, could be Assault Vest for the potential like special Lucario, for the potential standard Latios set, I'm not really sure. Mew can be anything, but looking at his team, it's probably defensive to couple with the Chansey like I was mentioning before, but I do of course have to respect the fact that it could be offensive. Regardless, I don't really know what his plan is, so that's kind of an issue here at Team Preview. However, I do feel more confident now than I was in the building process, just because I did think my matchup wasn't great when he brought Landorus, T, and Hoopa Unbound, but because he didn't bring those, then I think this is going to be a little bit more doable. So like I said before, I am going to lead with my Mega Latios because it is just the best lead matchup overall. If he leads Klefki, I can easily switch into my Gliscor and get my free Toxic Orb up and just start doing work to his team immediately. I also have the potential to go into something like a Fable and just start setting up immediately if I wanted to, but I don't want to do that right away. I want to kind of conserve my set first and just see how he wants to respond to things, see if he has something crazy like Psych Up on something, or maybe just a Trick user. Trick Mew is definitely possible, Switcheroo Klefki is definitely possible. I don't want to play my hand too early. So let's go ahead and jump into the match and see what happens. So, like I said before, I'm leading off with my Mega Latios, and he leads off with Entei, which is actually really nice. This is definitely just a free Draco Meteor, and if he decides to attack me with something, I can easily scout what kind of set it is, and see if it's Choice Banded, maybe Assault Vest, something like that. But he does just make the good play and goes into his Klefki, which is fine, because that is just a free switch into my Gliscor for the free Toxic Orb, which is nice, because now this is a guaranteed switch into Entei every time, and he starts to make some double switches here early in the game, probably just trying to scout what my initial responses are to his threats, which is perfectly fine for me, because all of my initial responses are very safe responses to really his entire team, so it doesn't really bug me too much that he's making these plays. But now he goes into his Rotom as I go into my Clefable to suck up the Will-O-Wisp. I was thinking about going into Mega Latios, but just in case he did go for the Wisp, I didn't want to get my Mega Latios burned this early, since I do kind of want it to be healthy to take on the Mew in case it is offensive. Now here he goes for the Volt Switch with his Rotom into his Entei, which is fine. I just go for the Moonblast with my Clefable, just kind of scouting for what he wants to go into, and I don't want to reveal my set like I said before. And he goes for the Sacred Fire with Entei, revealing that he is most definitely Choice Banded, actually got a max roll against my Gliscor there, and I'm just going to go for the Roost to make sure I'm at max HP, such that I can take a hit from Entei in the future as he goes to his Klefki. Now I'm just going to take this opportunity to go for a knockoff, because once I get rid of the leftovers, his only means of recovery on this Klefki is probably the Chansey Wish Passing, which is fine with me, as I should be able to deter that pretty well with Talonflame and such. So I'm just going to go for the Swords Dance here with my Gliscor and go for the knockoff, predicting the Rotom switching in, which is also very nice because getting rid of the leftovers on that makes Talonflame more likely to wear down the Rotom in the future. So I go into my Mega Latios here, expecting him to go for the Volt Switch, expecting my Clefable, and that works out pretty well. Now here he goes into his Altaria, and I'm just going to go straight into my Talonflame. That's my #1 counter to it, and I really don't care what he goes for. He decides to go for Heat Wave, which I thought was a pretty interesting play. I guess he was expecting my Jirachi to be my counter to Altaria, but that's not something I'm going to do. In that Heat Wave and Fire Blast and etc. are pretty common moves on Jirachi. Or on Mega Altaria rather. Now here he goes into his Chansey on my Talonflame, which I thought was an interesting play. I guess he was maybe hoping that I wasn't a Stallbreaker variant and that he could just go for Stealth Rock or something and start pressuring me that way. But I do mess my Will-O-Wisp on the switch into Chansey and then taunt him to prevent the Thunder Wave, so that's pretty cool. Now here he goes into his Klefki as I have my Gliscor in as well. And I just go for the Swords Dance again. I just go for the safe Earthquake here. There's really no reason to predict and go for a knockoff. It really didn't matter either way, honestly. It wasn't doing much damage to the Klefki with the Reflect Up anyway. But it is nice to get as much damage on it as possible if I can, so I just went for the Earthquake anyway. No big deal. He just goes for the Pain Split against my Latios here. And I guess he was expecting me to go for a knockoff or something on the Rotom. I'm not really sure on that play. But now I just go for the Defog to get rid of the Spike and the Reflect. And I just go back into my Gliscor on the Klefki, as it's just a hard switch into it. It really just doesn't seem to me that he has much to deal with my team at this point. Like I don't feel threatened at all, which is pretty nice. It's a nice situation to be in considering the team matchup before we even jumped into the battle. So I just go for the safe knockoff as he goes into his Mega Altaria, which is fine. I'm just going to go straight into my Talonflame again, and he pulls a nice double into his Rotom, which is fine. Here I strongly consider just going for the Will-O-Wisp and absorbing the Hydro Pump, but just in case he was offensive, I wanted to scout his EV spread before doing so, as I may not be able to survive a Hydro Pump from an offensive Rotom, but I definitely can from defensive. It just wasn't worth sacrificing or risking my Talonflame in that situation. Now here, he goes into his Inte to try to threaten out my Clefable, which does work. I'm going to go ahead and switch out my Clefable into my Gliscor here, as I know I can easily absorb any attack from this. And I'm just going to go for the knockoff here on the following turn, as if I can get rid of the Choice Band on this Inte, then he has potentially no answers left for the Clefable. And that's just what I'm going to go for here. And he does decide to go for the Sacred Fire, kind of like I expected, which I think is going to work out a lot better for me than he originally thought it was going to do. I'm kind of thinking that once he went for the Sacred Fire, he thought he was in a much better position, but I actually, he kind of fell for my trap there, which is kind of awesome. But see, I go into my Mega Latios here on the Sacred Fire. Luckily, I don't get burned, and I just roost up on the Chansey switch in. Now here, I'm just going to go straight into my Clefable, and this is basically endgame for me here, as I just go for the Cosmic Power, revealing that I'm not scared of his Entei, even if he does have Iron Head. He's not Choice Banded anymore, so he's not going to be able to do enough damage unless he like double flinches me or gets a double crit. He's not going to be able to do enough to me to where I am that scared of it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start speeding it up from this point forward, as all I really do from here on is just Calm Mind and Cosmic Power up to the point where I can beat his entire team with this Clefable, and Clefable is just going to go for a straight 6-0 sweep in this game, which is very nice for differential within my division. I'll get a +6 for this game, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, so I really don't have a lot else to say about the match at this point. It was kind of a slaughter at this point. He played well at the beginning. I think he got out prepared a little bit. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I do think that he probably should have brought his Landers T and his Hoopa Unbound if he wanted a better chance of beating the potential of a Clefable, of a Cosmic Power Clefable, because it just doesn't seem like he brought anything for this. Even a Calm Mind Clefable could have won this game at this point, so I don't really understand his thought process behind his building, but obviously I will accept the result because it's going to help me a lot in the long run. I do now have a 5-0 record in the league, which is the best in the league. None of the other undefeated teams won their game this week. Maddie lost to Cheeseboy and Toj lost to Dallas. So we're the last undefeated team. We're 5-0 with, I believe, a +19 differential. So that's pretty cool. We continue to expand on the best start in franchise history. But pretty soon here, he's just going to scoop, knowing that he really can't do anything to my Clefable. At this point, I just go for the Moonblast. Unfortunately, I'm not quite able to get the Oko on the Mew, revealing that he's probably a special defensive variant. I didn't bother calculating at this point because I really didn't need to. But I just go for the Soft Boil just in case he gets a double crit with Psychic. And I wanted to make sure Clefable got all the differential points this week because he's at +2 defense, +5 Spadef, and +4 special attack. He deserves all 6 kills this week. And he does just decide to leave here. So that's the game. It was a fun match, not the closest match in the world, obviously, but that's just goes to prove how big of a threat Clefable is in this format. And yeah, take notes, all you who have Clefable on your team. It's a very big force to be reckoned with, and I highly recommend this Cosmic Power set against teams like Fogs that are more of the wall breaking variety, because after Cosmic Power, it's not an easy wall to be broken anymore because both defenses are boosted, and Clefable just has all the great coverage options to be able to handle the threats to it. So that's the game, and that's about all I have to say in this matchup. So next week we have a very, very challenging match against Togavor and the Portland Timbers. They were undefeated before this week. They were 4-0. Now they're 4-1. But my matchup against them is probably the toughest one of the entire season, and he's a very good player, and he's very good at preparation. So it's going to be a triple whammy next week, and I'm really excited for the challenge. However, it's not going to be anywhere as smooth as this battle. I guarantee it. I'm going to have to prepare probably the best I ever have to come out on top next week, and I guess we'll see what happens. So I hope you're looking forward to that. I know I am, and I will see you all next week. Peace.